While reading Amy Silverman's My Heart Can't Even Believe It, I have to say that my main focus stuck with how positive her family life was, how she made a difference in not only herself, but her family, also in helping Sophie have this future. She fought for Sophie's rights on so many different levels. She acquired so much knowledge to share with so many people through her book. And I have to say, if it wasn't for her book, I wouldn't have the same sort of compassion I have today, or the same sort of understanding I have today with Down syndrome or any type of intellectual developmental disability. So while thinking about that, I was always thinking about how would my family deal with this, and I couldn't help but think that there was no way we could deal with this. That we are of the Asian Indian ethnicity, and I feel like we are not compatible to deal with situations like this. Growing up, I've never seen someone, with any type of disability around any family functions or any, mentions. No one in our community is known to be helping out any families like this, even though we consider ourselves to be very helpful people. And so I started my research, which is titled The Impacts of Asian Indian Ethnicity on Individuals with Intellectual Developmental Disability. I do claim I do want to make it a claim that saying that I feel that the Asian Indian ethnic group does have a negative impact on an individual that has an IDD, or even the individual's family that has an IDD. I feel like the culture is very backwards and not a very progressive one when dealing with circumstances like this. So a little bit to understand the two developmental disabilities I focused my research on, because this was all the information I was able to find was only in regards to these two, which is autism and Down syndrome. Down syndrome is basically a genetic disorder in which abnormalities in cell division result in extra genetic material, also known as chromosome 21. Whereas autism, also known as the autistic spectrum disorder, is a developmental disorder that impacts communication abilities and interactions. It is grouped in the same classifications as Down syndrome. So, in order to understand why I'm even focusing on just the Asian Indian ethnicity, you have to be able to understand the culture. And I have broken down the culture into these four bullet points. This is definitely not all what what the culture is about, or what, the ethnicity is about. These are just what I have learned while I was conducting this research from my interviewees, or, reading articles and whatnot. And this is my understanding of what we have to offer, what not just me and my group, but what just the whole community, the Asian Indian ethnicity, is all about. They're very conservative. Yes, there are gender roles still. There is still sexism. There is sexism in my own household today. There is sexism in India. There is sexism when referring to what girls can wear, what not, what they can't wear, what they're supposed to be doing, what they're not supposed to be doing, and all that stuff. And in order to understand the Asian Indian ethnic group, you have to understand religion. What is their religion? Because religion is such a big factor in India. It holds stand in politics. It holds stand, in movies. It is pretty much everywhere. It is crucial to understanding the Asian Indian ethnicity and their culture. So there's an intense devotion to religion. There's Hinduism, Islam, Sikhism. Those are the three main ones. The focus of my research has been Hinduism, just because I was able to find more people offering insight on this research that were of the Hindu background. Basically, Hinduism and Islam and Sikhism, they all do refer to the karma ideology, which is, you get, if you do good, you get good. If you do bad, you get bad. So this is what they use when referring to how they explain autism or how they explain someone with Down syndrome. Also, I wanted to point out one of my interviewees who is who has a son with Down syndrome, and she's now an advocate for the Asian Indian group and helping them understand, intellectual developmental disabilities so they can move forward. And she is the one that presented this concept to me that, we are we have very competitive nature. So when she was talking about this, she was explaining how, when these parents, when they think about having a kid, they already have mapped out, this whole goals for that child already. They're already going to whatever Ivy League they're going to, whatever they're going to be, lawyer, engineer, doctor, blah, blah, blah. And as when I'm referring to Ivy League and all that, as you can see, like, I do have the Harvard flag because that's where I'm supposed to be going. But okay. So they are very competitive. I pulled up this chart, which is really, crazy to me. It was by the National Foundation of American Policy. And it is a chart from 2016, which shows the number of immigrant founders of billion-dollar startup companies in the United States. And India is number one at 14. So this just shows you, being immigrants coming to America, and they have these goals and aspirations. It only gets worse when you're born in America. They have you were told your whole life, hey, you were born in this land of opportunity. Your goal in life is to be amazing and to pursue amazing things. And it's just a very competitive household. So going on from that, I'm talking about religion now. So Hinduism and how they refer to the disabled. This is what they call people that are born with any type of disability. It doesn't matter if it's intellectual developmental disability. It doesn't matter if it's a physical disability or whatever. You are grouped under one. And so the Hindu doctrine of samsara connects individual differences to actions performed in a past life. So mental and physical suffering is thought to be the part of the unfolding of karma and is the consequence of past inappropriate action that occurred in one's current life or past life. I pulled this excerpt from a website. The author Whitman wrote that when he asked, Hindu people, like, why is there, autistic people, why are there Down syndrome people? They refer to it as like, oh, well, it's because you get what you deserve. You have a kid born with Down syndrome because you must have done something horrible. You have a kid with autism because you must have done something horrible in your past life or in your current life. And that is really their explanation for it. There's nothing else that they can provide you. They don't know the science behind it. They just know it's bad. They think it's not a good thing, for sure, because they really can't accept differences. So this is how they explain it in their culture. And growing up, this is what we are told or what we hear around us. Another thing I pulled out was from the Quran directly, which is the Islamic Bible, and its quote says, "Such are the men whom Allah has cursed, for he has made them deaf and blinded their sight." When he's talking about deaf and blinded, he's referring to, and when I'm saying he, I'm referring to Allah, their God. He's referring to the handicap, and the handicap is referring to, intellectual developmental disabilities. Like I've said, like in Hinduism and Islam, there is no difference when you're talking about the two. As we both know, you can be handicapped through life, whereas with, an IDD, it does not come just by you falling off the roof of something, but they group it as one. They say everything is because of karma. So when I'm I found one important research journal. It was an abstract study conducted about through 7 students who explained why even knowing ethnicity when you're researching things such as like autism, why is it important to know the ethnicity? And their research resulted in 3 different results, such as there's a reduced generalizability of results and limited the researcher's ability to replicate studies. So without knowing ethnicity, there were limitations to the research. They also claim that methodological issues that potentially have hindered the advancement of autism-related interventions with culturally diverse populations. Assessing race and ethnicity variables is vital to improving outcomes among lower socioeconomic status groups. So ethnicity is a major factor, and when you're trying to understand, how certain groups act differently, or if they even act differently, why they act differently, and if you have the ethnicity down, it is easier to understand why certain groups aren't going to therapy. And it's because they don't want to leave the house. They don't want to be seen with this child. They feel like there's a stigma behind it. But you can't really know that if you aren't trying to figure out what, ethnicity does this, what it does not. And majority of the time, another problem is that the Asian Indian ethnic group does not want to be, does not want to participate in any type of study. So that also is also causing, lots of hindrance when it comes to trying to figure this out. I read a piece from this book called Clinical Topics in Cultural Psychiatry, in which researcher Jean O'Hara kind of did a compare and contrast with Asian Indian families and British white families, and differentiated how both of them, dealt with intellectual disability differently, or what were their beliefs on it. And she conducted this over 2 years with 12 families, about 12 or more families. She does claim that the Asian families had more contact with the holy person. They were obviously more religious. They were less aware of what their child's problem is even called. They believed in spiritual explanations and causes for their child's disability. 50% did not even know the cause of their child's disability. They believed that religion had something to say about the intellectual disability. Their faith helped them cope, but offered little social or practical support. They wanted care to be provided by a relative when they were no longer able to provide it themselves. So this shows that, there is no understanding of what is going on. They know what their religion teaches them. Once it happens, they know they can't really reverse what happened. So they kind of choose to go into denial. They're not getting really any support from people in their community. They're not getting any support from their religion, which is so important to them. These religious ideals, they're not offering anything for them. So they kind of just, distance themselves from their own community. They distance themselves from any community in general. They just want to be invisible at this point. And then when she compared it to the white families received medical explanations for their child's disability. None offered any spiritual explanation for their child's disability. Only one family felt that it did not know the cause of the disability. And they claim religion and faith did offer social support. Most wanted their child to be cared for in a community home by statutory or voluntary services. So this even shows that, they're trying for their child to be an individual that can be independent, whereas in the Asian community, there is no teaching, the child how to be independent, or the individual how to be independent. Now, is it recidifiable? I feel that the only way this can move forward is if there's awareness, education, and acceptance. There has to be the eradication of all stigma surrounding this. There needs to be lots of education. There needs to be lots of acceptance in the community.